Hello and welcome everybody to Learn to Code React single page application. Today will be the last one in our series. And so today is going to be a pretty big one. We're going to actually take the work that we've done and put it up on the internet so our friends can see it, our parents can see it, future employers can see it, and we're going to build out our first sort of resume portfolio. And so what does that entail? So if you're not familiar with GitHub, I'm going to walk you through a very basic introduction to GitHub. It is a very complicated product, which does require some time to get used to, but I'm going to try to walk you through it as best I can if you're not familiar with it. So I'm going to go very slowly on this one in the initial time. And then we're going to deploy our site using a external package called Github Pages. Then once we load our basic site, the very basic template React site, then we're going to start actually reviewing the actual code breakdown, what we've done, and then again, re-upload it at the very end. And so today is going to be basically about sort of getting this site, reviewing what we've done, and then pushing it out to the internet. All right, so with that, let's get started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share out my Visual Studio Code, and that way we can follow along. So in the meantime, I'm going to start up my npx create React app. Hopefully you are familiar with this command line tool. It is our baseline to be able to build out our project or get the template of our project up and going. Now I'm going to direct you to GitHub. And inside of GitHub, you can just go to github.com. And if you go to just github.com, if you don't have an account, if you're not signed in, it'll ask you to sign in. And this will be your standard homepage. Here, I'm going to redirect you to your repositories. And inside of your repositories, you'll be able to see I have a ton of repositories here that I've done work on years ago or up to present. So it goes back quite a ways. And you can see sort of all the pushes I've done and all the projects I've done. Inside of here, you're probably going to, if you have a resume, put on your GitHub repository URL. Employers want to see this. They will look at all of your data. They will look at how you think. They will look at sort of how you organize data and how you, what language you prefer to code in. GitHub says a lot about you. It is your resume, essentially, in a disorganized way that employers can then look at directly. So this is your sort of raw work. So with that, what we're going to do is I'm going to start directly by creating a new repository. Maybe hopefully this is all like filled out for you, but if you've never created a repository, click on the plus sign and create or click new repository. And inside of here, I'm just going to type in learn to code. And learn to code is available for me. So I'm going to take in learn to code, and that's all I need to do. I'm going to create a repository. So now once I've created the repository for learn to code, I get this sort of intimidating screen and there's nothing in it and it looks really funky. I'm going to focus your attention down to here, and this is what we're going to focus on in a moment. But before we do that, right now in the background, what's happened is I've created my first app project already. Now, I haven't done anything in here. One thing I am going to do is just go into the folder and make sure it works. So npm start. And inside of npm start, it'll give me a new web page. And it'll be the project that we've been working on so far. It'll be this basic React template with the React logo, and that's exactly what it looks like. So this is out of the box, no modifications, anything. This is what React looks like right away. So I'm going to stop that, and now I'm going to install a GH Pages dependency or library. Now, what I mean by that is inside of the package JSON, there's going to be a few changes we do need to make inside of this file. And inside of this file, one thing I'm going to do is, not inside of the file, but on the command line, I'm going to type in npm install minus capital D for a development dependency. I'm going to type in gh-pages. That is the GitHub Pages repository that we are going to use, or GitHub Pages package we are going to use to be able to upload our project to the correct repository so that it does its magic and pushes it out to the web. All right. So now that we've done that, we do need to add in a couple of lines, and I'm going to redirect your attention to this site here. Basically, if I search for GH Pages on Google, it's like the third link that comes up, and I can, whoops, not that one. It is the fourth link that comes up, and this one's pretty popular because it's got a couple lines in here that we need to copy, and it'll be right down here in the scripts department. So there'll be a section down here saying update your package JSON scripts, add pre-deploy and deploy. And in the middle of the page, almost like directly in the middle of the page, you'll find these two lines. And so I'm not going to copy the scripts, but if I come to package JSON, I will see these scripts right here. And so there'll be a start, build, test, eject. After the eject, I'm going to add in, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't have to be after the eject, but in this section, in the scripts section, I'm going to add these two lines in. We are going to have to come back in here and add in one more thing, but before doing that, I'm going to go in and run my GH deploy. I'm going to start doing all the GitHub stuff now. So what we've done is so far started our project, made sure it worked, and then I installed GH Pages, and then I added in these two lines. Now I'm going to start doing all this funky stuff right here, git add, git init, so I can copy all the way down to here. I'm going to copy these 5 lines and paste them in directly and hit enter and good to go. So changes, so I need to do a git add, and that will change up, oops, there we go, and a git commit minus m, first commit. And now what I can do is run a git, a npm run deploy. So I'm going to run npm run deploy. And once that is done, it'll deploy the site automatically to GitHub. And then GitHub will make it into a web page on its own. And I'll show you kind of what happens in the background. So now that it is uploading, we see that it is published. Cool, that's a good sign, no errors. If I refresh here, I will see my code here. Cool. And I see this branch name is GH Pages, and I see updates, and I see this orange sort of thing here. And inside of the orange thing, it says pending. And so now I can see some checks haven't completed yet, pages and deployment build in progress. And now I can go to the details of that. And if I don't know how to get there, I can always just go up to actions, and actions alone will point me to the build process. This is all happening behind the scenes. It's all magic. And then these two will turn green eventually as long as there's no errors. So that turn green on its own, and then deploy will turn green on its own. And then I can go into settings and find the URL. Here, the URL is already there. I can click on this one, or I can go to settings and find the URL directly. And this will be the URL that I get. And if I click on this, I'm going to go back real quick. If I click on this and open it in a new tab, it's going to come out with a blank page. And it's like, wait, why? Why is this all blank? I don't like this. This is not what I want. So the problem is I do need to add in this URL into my package JSON file. So I'm going to do that up at the very top. I know this is really complicated. It will take some time to get used to, and you'll have to do this quite a few times before you kind of get it right or get the feel of it. But now when I run my GH run deploy again, once I've added that line in for the homepage, now when I run it again, it'll all work. And so this is a bit complicated, a bit clumsy. If you've never seen GitHub, you are getting a few things thrown at you at the same time that are very unfamiliar. So I urge you to watch this video a couple times and just watch through the flows, because we're seeing, oh, the first time didn't work, the second time, okay, it is going to work. And so now the build is running, and this will take roughly around 20, 25 seconds, somewhere in there. And then the report build status will start, and then the deploy will start automatically. And then we'll have our web page good to go. So 20 seconds there, and then the deploy is happening already. And so if we come back to our page, we should hopefully, once this goes green, once the deploy hits green, then we should be able to refresh and be okay. And so refresh, and there we go. There's our spinner. You can access the site globally. You can access it. You can give it to your parents. You can give it to whoever you want to, your friends, your family, your, I don't want to recommend giving it to your future employer yet, but if like you want some kudos, validation, you can send it to your friends, be like, I set up my first web page. Yeah. So awesome. Nice work for getting this far, because this is not easy. This is complicated. All right. We haven't even gotten into the actual meat of what we're doing today, which all we did was just these two things. And that was like, whoa, that was a lot. Now we're going to review what we've learned and put in routing, fill in the contact form, do all of this stuff, and then deploy the site again with GitHub Pages that are end. All right, so that brings us to this page that we've been working on for a while. I've got the developer tools already loaded. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this element. This is the site we've been working on for a long time now. And these are the HTML elements that I want to convert into my React project. So let's jump into my source app.js and let's get rid of all this div HTML stuff here and let's paste in my project here. There's a few changes I am going to have to make in here. First and foremost, the body is going to change the word div. And then if you followed along for a little while, you already know what's coming. I've got to put in these closing tags at the end of all of these error lines. HTML is slightly modified, or React slightly modifies HTML, so you can't have certain things that are common in HTML inside of React. So you do have to change in a few things, but it's not that big of a deal. All right, so now I'm going to go to this and I'm going to change up and I'm going to add in a name field equals that. And inside here, I'm going to pop in name. Inside here, I'm going to pop in email. And inside of here, I'm going to pop in message. This is going to come in handy later on when we do the FormSpree. And the for equals, I'm going to pop in name, email, and for message. Now, HTML inside these HTML attributes cannot be the same as they were in standard HTML because there's certain keywords that are reserved in JavaScript, such as class and for. So we do have to change this for into HTML for, because for is keyword for a for loop, and then class is keyword for object-oriented programming classes. So we have to change class to class name. So if you hold down Windows and the D key, you can select all the classes at once and just save or change it that way all at once. So those will be our changes that we made. And let's restart the project. So npm run start, and this page will look ugly. It will look terrible. It will not look good at all, but it will be functional. So here we go. It's functional. It's ugly. It doesn't look good at all. It's terrible, but we are on the right track. So now what we're going to do is grab the CSS, and inside the CSS, we are going to grab all this and pop it into app CSS. We're going to delete everything in the app CSS, replace it, and good to go. And now our site learn to code at this URL. Why is it at the learn to code URL? Because we popped it in the package JSON up here. So we are good to go. Okay, now is time to start to break this down into its components. So app.js right now has all these components, and we want to add routing, we want to add a bunch of features, but we got to separate this stuff out first. So let's start taking the hero, section 1, section 2, section 3, and the contact form. Let's take those all out into their own individual components. And so I'm going to do this via the command line just because it's faster. And you'll also get to see command line shortcuts. But inside of here, I'm going to do a mkdir source components. And I'm going to do inside of components, I'm going to do a home. I'm going to do a, sorry, maybe not a home, but a hero. Shouldn't have been a home. rm-rf source components home. Get rid of the home folder. Don't quite need that one. Need the hero folder. And then inside hero, or sorry, we'll do section 1, 2, 3, and then a contact form. So we can see inside the components, we're getting all of our folders. So I want to put all of these into the home folder though. So I did make a slight mistake, and I want to actually have a home folder. And I'm going to take all of these and pop them into the home folder. There we go. So move those in. So now we have home and all of these. Inside components, I am also going to make an about a services. So make their source components about. And so now in our components, we have a about and a home. And inside of components, I'm going to have a services. And inside of components, I'm going to have a layout. These are the 4 folders that I want. I want about, home, layout, and services. Home is going to be the most complicated because it has the most amount of items. Because it is the most developed. So I'm going to take everything from here and put it into these individual home folders. Layout, about, and services is going to be sort of thinner, slimmer, not as much stuff, so not as complicated. I'm going to go ahead and make the JS files for each of these. So inside of source components, contact form, I'm I'm going to make a contact form.js inside of home, section 1, section 1.js, and then section 2 we'll have a section 2.js, and then a section 3, section 3.js, and then finally a hero and a hero.js. We do need a home.js as well. So this is all of our setup for the home. Inside of contact, what I'm going to do is export const contact form and pop in the necessary components, return. And I'm going to leave this as is for now. I'm going to copy and paste this specifically down to the hero, down to section 1, down to section 3, down to section 2, and down to home. Cool. So I know I got to change these up. So inside the hero, boom, section 1, and then section 3, and section 2, and home. Cool. All right, so I'm going to review what I did. I know that was a lot. That was really confusing, but I did a contact form, a hero for contact form folder, hero folder, section 2, 1, 2, and 3 folders. And then inside of each of those, I put in a file, a JS file, and I put in this component. It's all red because it's all wrong at the moment. There's a lot of errors that I have right now, and I want to purposefully show you what the errors are. I did this out of a sense of ease, so it makes it easier for me to copy and it doesn't become so tedious. So hopefully you can see the patterns. So now I'm going to go to app.js, and here's the hero section, and I'm just going to cut this section out. So if I cut this section out and come into hero and my hero section, hero.js, I'm just going to paste this in, save it, and now it all turns green. Awesome. I go into my app.js and I have section 1, and I come down and I cut this all out, and I come into section 1.js and I paste it in here. Sweet, it turns green. And I come into section 2, cut this out, and I pop it into here, turns green, and I come into section 3 and cut this all out. Boom, come into section 3, save that, and then my contact form. So here is my contact, and cut that out and pop it into contact form. And should be good to go. Now inside of our home, all of these are good. Now I'm going to start adding in all of those items. So we've got the hero, we've got section 1, we've got section 2, and we have section 3, and we have a contact form. So all of those items are there, and I'm going to go back to app.js, and in between the nav bar and the footer, I'm going to pop in the home. Pop that in. Cool. And save it. And it looks like if I refresh here, oh no, my site isn't even up. Well, it might be a good idea to start my site, and hopefully everything looks good and is working just fine. And oh no, can't resolve section 1, section 1. So inside of here, inside of our home.js, I have a typo in section 1. So let's go to section 1 and see what the problem is. /section 1. So why? I see the problem. I need to rename this. I did forget an N, section 1. There we go. That fixes it. So section 1, section 2, section 3, and the contact form. Everything's looking really good. Now we'll start to focus on these. Let's go back here. So what we've done is copy the site code, broken down into components. I haven't done the about and the services, so let me add those in because we're going to start to do routing. So inside of about, I'm going to add in a about.js. And so export const about return. And inside here, I'm going to pop in a div, and inside it's going to be an H3, and it's going to say, welcome to the about page. Done. Copy this, go to the services page, and just a basic services.js. And inside services.js, flip this out and say services. Cool. All right. Now we haven't touched layout yet. I will get to layout in a moment, but one thing I want to cover just now is inside of here. If I go to services, nothing happens. If I go to about, nothing happens. If I go to home, we're already on the home page. So what do we have to do? We have to enable something called routing. All right. So let's add in this routing component. And inside of our routing component, we are going to add in a new package. So I'm going to jump out, close the program, Control C out of it, and do npm install React router DOM. This time it's not a dev dependency, it's an actual package. So install React router DOM, and inside package JSON, we'll see React router DOM right here. Cool. And I think last week when we were doing this, it was on version 627. Now it's already on 628. Packages change frequently. So what was last week will not be this week. Nothing is static in this world, and it is so annoying. But I digress. Anyway, let's start our package back up, or let's start our project back up. npm run start, make sure everything's all working. Cool, it's functional. Haven't broken anything. It all looks good. And now when I come into our index.js, what I'm going to add is our global routing capability. So I'm going to add in the ability to do routing, and so browser router from React router DOM. Cool. And I'm going to wrap the app inside here. And so, boom. And so now I have my routing capability inside of my project. Now I can start to add in that functionality of routing. And the first thing I'm going to do is add in sort of changing around these links into what they need to be. So the link package is what I'm going to import. So I'll import link up top here, import link from React router DOM, and link to, and here we're going to have to add in a learn to code / and I'm going to get rid of the home because this is our default. And then for these next two, the services and the about, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this in. So learn to code services, get rid of that hash, pop in learn to code. And I'm going to change up this link or this ahref to link and to. And at the very end, these I'm going to change to link, link, and link. See if that breaks anything. Saved it. Nothing is broken so far. And now when I go to services, hey, my URLs have changed a little bit. I can see that now it's a real URL, like, hey, cool, about services and home. Sweet. Now what I'm going to do is add in the actual routing component, because I'm not going to services, I'm not going to about, I am just going and clicking on the links, but they don't really go anywhere because I haven't enabled routing. So here what I'm going to do is click on routes. So I need to have a routes wrapper. And inside of here, I'm going to have a route definition. I'm going to have a path equals to learn to code, learn to code / and the element is going to be, and all the syntax is really weird. It doesn't really make any sense at all, but it is what it is. So, well, so I'm going to copy this, paste this in, and here we're going to have the services. And there's our services. And I'm going to type in services. And here we're going to have the about. And about. And so now I've added in the about and the services, and we'll see how this all looks and feels. And hey, that's kind of cool. Welcome to the about page. We're on the about. If I click on services, welcome to the services page. It looks really sparse. because really there's nothing in our about in the services. That's all it is. This is all we have. It looks like crap. It looks like trash because there's nothing that we've put in there. But if you come to our home, hey, it looks really nice. So what is the project homework for you? The homework is to build out a services page that emulates the home page. Take in any one of these design arrangements or all of them and pop them into the services. And inside the services, you can then start displaying your portfolio, how much you would charge per hour, what kind of rate you want, what type of full project scope you are willing to do, all of your accolades. And the about is your resume, where you went to school, how many previous positions you've had, how long you've been in those positions, your consultancy, references, all that stuff can go in the about page. And so now you've got a full functioning resume with services that you can then build out based off of this style of template. Or if there's another template you like and you want to challenge yourself, you can go build out another template. So this is really for you to now have a working portfolio that you can show to others. So now what we've done is we've added routing and it actually all works. Hey, that's kind of cool. We've done all this. We do want to clean this up a little bit though. So right now it's kind of looking a little dirty because we've got this nav bar here and we've got this sort of footer here. And we've got this layout that we haven't done anything with. So let's clean this up. Let's go into layout and add a navbar folder. And then inside navbar or layout, we're going to add in a footer folder. And I know this is tedious, 100%. I'm with you. It's so tedious to add in a folder for every one of these, just single file. But this is what you're going to want to get in the habit of doing, especially when you have larger projects where you're going to want to have individual folders for each component because you're going to have individual styling components for each individual component as well. So there's going to be multiple things in here to make it more efficient. But right now I belabor the point to make it so that you are annoyed with this so you know what's coming down the pike. All right, so inside of our navbar.js, what am I going to do? Export const navbar. And inside here, toss this in, return, and then I'm going to copy in. Let's just copy this real quick to our footer as well, and paste this in and footer. Cool. And inside of our app.js, we're going to grab the footer, pop that in, save it, and that goes nice and green. Our navbar, we're going to have to be a little more careful. Because our navbar has an external link, we're going to take this out. We're going to pop it into the navbar, but we are going to have to add this link component back in to this file so that this link component will work. In our app.js, we can then remove this link. It goes gray anyway, and we'll get some warnings that, hey, link isn't being used. You can already see that up here. Logo isn't being used. It's defined, but never used. So that's just trying to help us be more efficient. And there we go. We're nice back to healthy green, and we are all good. So now in our routes, what we're going to do is we can do this. And if we go back to our project, let's take a look at it. Well, we lost our navbar. We lost our footer. If we don't have a way to navigate to about and services, what happened? If we go to about directly, hey, it works, but we don't have a navigation bar or a footer or anything. We just got this blank page. That's not cool. So let's go to layout. And inside of layout, what we're going to add in is export const layout equals, and this is going to be a little funky. This is going to be that whole idea of passing something in that we don't yet see. And here I'm going to pass in the navbar. This is going to be our main driver for every site. And I'm going to toss in the footer here. Cool. Now, if I come into our app.js and I want to have all of these routes display in between the layout, cool. I'm going to wrap and close that. And so now if I save this, what's going to happen? I've got my navbar, I've got my footer. I go to home, I have nothing. I go to services, I have nothing. I go to about, I have nothing. What is going on? This is kind of funky and it doesn't really make sense and it's not really well documented. It's not really easy to understand. It's one of those things that you need to be shown so that you get an idea of how it works. But inside of here, there's a very special keyword called props. And inside between these two elements, because we want to have all of our home page or about page or services appear between the navbar, between the footer, we need to pop in what's called a props.children component. And once we do that, Now we can see the elements working properly. So home is there, service is there, and about is there. If props.children is not there, none of the stuff in between here shows up. So these are the children inside of layout. So these are the nested components inside of layout that get to show up inside of the layout. Hopefully that'll take some time to get a feeling and get used to how that connection works, but hopefully that makes sense. But you will need to play around with it and delete it and recreate it a couple times to get used to it. Okay, so in review, what have we done? We've broken down our site, we've added the routing, and now we're going to fill out that contact form with FormSpree, and this is the link we're going to use. And I think I'm going to go through this one relatively quickly, but hopefully this will make sense. There's a few ways to do this, and we covered this already in the contact form series, but inside of here, there's a form component. And this form component is this like magical thing that we haven't really done anything with. So in here, I'm just going to do a on submit or action, sorry. Action equals to, which one is it? Let me go back to FormSpree. I can never remember the syntax. But if I go to settings, hopefully it'll show me where it is. Maybe it's not the rules. Probably not the plugins. There we go. It is a action and a method. So I'm just going to use this one. And so if I go back to my React app, I'm going to go to action equals to this action, which is the URL that I want to send it to. And where did I get that URL? I got that URL from our from the endpoint within FormSpree. So if I go to learn to code and I go to overview and then I go to view details, then I can see, oh, here's the HTML. Here's also the React version. I just stick with the HTML. I will show you how to do this one in the future and momentarily, but I'm not going to use this method. This one's a bit funky for me. I don't like it as much, but I'll show you a different method to use. And we're going to use state and all that stuff. So we've got this link from FormSpree, and we're going to do a method equals to a post. Save this. What's really important in here is we do need to have the name component, and the name component. So name, email, and message. The form will automatically take these and send these name components, name, email, and message, over to FormSpree. And so from our React page, if I go back to home and I just start filling this out, I'm going to say Sunil at sunil.com. And this is a message to FormSpree. And I'll say submit. And inside the submit, what happens is, thanks, the form was submitted successfully. Awesome, but not awesome. Good and bad. It's got its pluses and minuses, but let's go to submissions inside the FormSpree and we'll see that, oh, hey, it kind of, wait, why did that not work? Why is it not? That makes sense. Okay, sorry about that. I was signed out and didn't even realize it. But all right, back in, and now we see, hey, this message got sent. Today is November 12th at 9:04 p.m. Sweet, good to go. This message is to FormSpree. Awesome. So we know we're connected. All right, so we got sent out to this. Thanks, the form was submitted. You can use this if you want to. By all means, go for it. Me, I'm personally a fan of keeping the experience of the user within my site. So if I send them a message from here and I click submit, they're going to go to the FormSpree website. I don't want them to do that. I want them to stay here. So if I do this and Sunil at sunil.com, how do I get them to stay in my site and dynamically show a thank you message or some other content here? So if I hit submit, I'm back to FormSpree. Not a great user experience. Ugh. So let's change that up. I'm going to go through this pretty fast because we covered it in the contact form, but I'm going to use something called use state. And between the export and the return, between that first const definition of the contact form and the return, I'm going to use something called use state, and I'm going to call name set name equals to use state. And it'll automatically import use state, and I'll give it a empty sort of field. Const email, set email, and this will be a use state again. And you can use that same variable for use state. And then inside here, it'll be message and set message and use state. And we'll do a const last one processed. And we'll do a set processed. So hopefully that'll work. Use state. And what we're going to use that use process for is a true false setting. So this will help us figure out, did the message send? If it did, display one thing. If it didn't send, display another thing. So here, the first thing I'm going to do is get this sort of processed thing. Actually, I'll set the process thing up later. Inside the form, I'm going to kind of comment this one out because this is the old way of doing things, or the original way. Instead, I'm going to do a form here. And inside here, I'm going to do an on submit equals to handle submit. So here I'm going to do a, or actually I should say on submit handler, sorry, on submit handler. That's a more appropriate naming convention. You'll have the on submit handler, on click handler. Naming conventions are kind of weird in React. But here I'm going to set up a const on submit handler. And inside of here, there's going to be some very special, unique things that go on. I'm going to pass in this thing called event. And inside of here, I'm going to hit save first. And when I come in here, sunil.com message, this will get removed. Why? And I'll hit submit and boom, the page refreshes. But we see the URL changed big time. Name, email, and message. This will get removed. Why? Because by default, inside of HTML, the default action for any form is to submit the form and refresh the page. It's trying to be really helpful, but unfortunately in this case, we have to tell it to not be helpful. So event.prevent default is what we are going to need. And once we do that, now I'll set Sunil at sunil.com, and this message should stay. So pop that and hit submit, and now nothing happens. Pretty awesome. I can hit submit all day long, nothing happens. Cool. Now we're going to go into handling these name objects. So inside of here, I'm going to put a on change. We need to capture this data. And so on change, curly bracket, pop in event, and inside event, we're going to do a set name, and we're going to capture everything inside event.target.value. And so we're going to do this for each one of the values for email. And so instead of set name, we're going to do set email. And we're going to do set message. And now we can save that, and we can come up to our on submit handler. And if I'm going too fast, I apologize. I'm doing it for the interest of time because we have covered this in the previous. So if you want a more detailed explanation, go back and check out the contact form video, and it'll break down these in very, very individual detail with console logs and everything. But here, in the interest of time, because this is a review, hopefully this is something that's already familiar to you. So we're going to come here and we're just going to console log the name, email, and the message. And inside here, we're going to go to view, developer, and developer tools. And we're going to go to our console. So inside our console, we're going to delete all of this data. Oops. We're going to delete all that data and start off with a blank screen. And if I submit this, now I have, oh no, what's going on here? Well, let's refresh this and see what's going on. So if I come here and I type in Sunil, hopefully email Sunil at sunil.com and message. Hopefully, if I've done everything correctly, these should pop up. And we have Sunil at sunil.com and message. Awesome. So we're connected appropriately, we're connected correctly between our form here, our individual input labels here, and our processing function up here. This is where things are going to start to get really funky. I'm going to do a fetch. And I'm going to change this event type or const type to a asynchronous function. We'll cover asynchronous in a much later lecture when we get into the MERN stack. But for now, just remember these keywords, fetch, and then inside of here is going to be a URL, and then we're going to have a open close curly bracket. Inside here, the method is going to be a post. We're going to have a certain headers, and these are going to be content type application, and then we are going to do a body, and this is going to be a JSON.stringify, and we are going to toss in a dictionary of name, email, and message. And inside of here, the URL is going to be what? Let URL equal be or equal to this guy right here. So why am I using a let? Because inside of a function, we want to use a let because of the scope. And then finally, we do an await, we do a var data equals to await response. Whoops. This should be a let response equal to await and await response.json. And then we are going to console log the data that comes back. All right, so all this looks really, really confusing. We're going to get to the process component once we have the data available here. And so now I'm going to submit this, and hey, wait a minute. The headers property is incorrect. So let's take a look at that. Let me look up the right way. MDN Mozilla fetch. I probably did the headers incorrectly. Headers, and let's come down and take a look at, oops, let's look at fetch examples. Fetch post example. There we go. So let's look at headers. There we go. That's what it was. Headers. There we go. I messed that one up big time. So yes, this should be, that is much more appropriate. And so that complaint should go away. Let's just refresh this and come back down. And test message. And I will submit that. And hopefully, hey, look at that. We got this random message that came back. Next, thanks, language. Okay, true, sweet. It looks like, hey, everything went all right. It looks like, hey, our FormSpree responded with thanks, good to go. Okay, true. So inside of our contact form, we can say if data dot okay, this is automatically true, set processed to true. So right now our processed is false. So we want to set processed is true. And so inside of our else, we want to display some type of error. We want to say like, hey, there's a problem. Set error message. Let's do set processed. Let me think about this. Let's just do a console log for now. I don't want to do anything on the HTML. There was a problem. We shouldn't run into this yet, but I'm going to set up the processed portion first. This is going to get really, really weird and hard to see, but I am going to zoom out a little bit, and the text is going to get really small, because what's going to happen here is I'm going to kind of highlight all of this and put this whole thing goes into a open close curly bracket. And then at the very top, I'm going to have a processed and then a ampersand. And then down below, I'm going to have a colon, and the syntax is very funky. And I'm gonna have a div, whoops, and I'm gonna say thank you. And I'm gonna use the class name contact in here as well. Whoops. So here there is going to be some errors for sure, and I need to do something in here, which I am missing. Let's see. Do I just need a div here? That was not it. Where am I going wrong? I am blind at the moment. And processed. Yeah, why is that complaining? What am I missing here? Why can't I see it? Give me a moment. Let's take a look at React conditional render. And it should be why can I not see this? Maybe I have just done too much coding and my eyes are going dark and I am not able to see it. And that's, I don't want the if statement. I want conditional rendering. I'm going to cheat a little bit and go into week 8 it was. And I'm going to take a look at the source. And let's take a look at components. And let's look at contact form. I know I did that already in this one. So, and inside of here, what did I do? Yeah, it looks right, but I'm not getting the, oh, I know what I'm missing. That's why. Ugh, I'm missing the div up here. There we go. So I do need to wrap the whole thing with a div. That's going to be funky. And then the error goes away. My apologies. Like I just couldn't see that for a second. I'm going to clean up the formatting on here. Just format document. And that'll clean up the text a little bit so it's easier to see. But we've got this div. We've got this processed. It starts off as false. So this is going to be logically really, really weird. But there's a way to negate this. I'm going to say this first and then open this back up and then show you kind of what's going on. Give me just a moment here. And all right, so if we go back to React project, now you'll see at the very bottom, there's a thank you here. And it's like, wait, why is there a thank you here? We just loaded our page and it's brand new. What's going on? Why is that thank you at the bottom? Well, here we have to set sort of like this. Let me jump back in and make this a little bit bigger. We need to negate that and then we can run it properly. So here's our contact us and everything here. And so let's jump that back out. Cool. Now we have this name. So Sunil at sunil.com. This should result in a thank you. This should result in a thank you. Thank you message locally. And I will submit this. And boom, there's our thank you message locally right down there. I apologize. I just couldn't remember that we needed to wrap this thing with a div. It was just something I was just completely missing. But all right, so we have this div here and we need to wrap it. This syntax is super funky. So there we go. So now we've got this sort of like this div down here with a thank you, and we've got our form conditionally showing up. How did we do all that? Again, this is a lot. There's no joke. This is complicated and there's a lot going on. But we did an onSubmit handler. The button down here is an automatic submit button, and that button takes all the form data and sends it to this onSubmit handler. This onSubmit handler then comes in and prevents the default method of HTML from loading. More importantly, it takes in all the name, email, and message that we have, and then sends all of this stuff over to this URL in this sort of like wrapper sort of way. And so this wraps up the data in a really, really nice way, sends it over to the destination. The destination then kind of waits for a response, or our site then waits for a response from the destination. And then we can do some processing based on the information we get. So that's it in a very, very high level. I did this in a much more detailed way in the contact in week 8. So if you're struggling with trying to figure out like why things work the way they do, check that video out. It goes into much more detail to break out each one of the methods that we just went over. Okay, so now we're finally going to deploy our site to the final GitHub pages, and let's pray everything works. So what I'm going to do is exit out of this. So I'm going to Control C out of this, and I'm just going to do a npm run deploy. And this will launch the GitHub pages thing again. And hopefully now when we get to our site, we will be good to go. And let's take a look at our React site that's on our local host. Let's take a look. So it published our site. And now when we go to our GitHub site, so Linus items, skills up, which is fine. I don't want this open. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to go to my repository, and I'm going to go to the learn to code. And inside of learn to code, there's going to be some actions. And inside of actions, you can see it working already. So cool. I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to go to pages. And then I'll be able to see, hey, it hasn't deployed yet, but let's just open this in a new tab. And here is our site. Hey, sweet. Here's our services. Here's our about. Here's our home. Hey, let's see if this works as well. So Sunil at sunil.com. This is our full site. And I hit submit, and I get a thank you down below after I get that message back from FormSpree. And if I take a look at FormSpree, I will see, hey, everything looks good here. So let me reload this and make sure we refresh to get the right. Oh, come on, why are you so slow? And there we go. So, hey, this is our full site message right here, sent at 9:24. That's the full thing. We covered a lot today, but in an hour, what did we do? We basically set up GitHub. I mean, granted, it takes a long time to get used to GitHub, but we deployed a project, the base project that we had. We deconstructed our main site and converted from HTML into React. We then broke down our site into smaller components so that we can manage them easier. We added routing so that we can have an about and a services page. And then from there, we did a contact form and made it fully functional. And then we again redeployed the entire site. This is a complete review of what we have done. The only thing that hasn't been reviewed yet is the Figma component, but I'll leave that for another time. Maybe we cover that at another section. But I did want to kind of overview kind of everything we've done. So as a review, what we've done in week 1 was we looked over Figma, looking at design, looking at font pairing guides, trying to think of HTML as like boxes, or trying to think of all web apps or mobile apps as smaller boxes so that it's easier for us to code. So if we think of each individual component as a box, maybe just jump into Figma real quick and show you what that means. So if I jump into my Figma, I don't want to log in. I'll do this maybe later. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it right now. Oops. Let's do this. And hopefully I can log into Figma and we have everything. Did I log in with the right account? I think I did. Yes, there we go. Sweet. So inside of our Figma layout, we have these boxes. We have the header box, we have the hero box, we have the section 1, 2, 3, and contact form and footer boxes. So if I start to look at a web page in terms of boxes, then it makes it so much easier to figure out how to create these components. If I start thinking of it like, oh no, how am I going to get the picture next to this text? Or how am I going to get this next to this and all these arrangements? I'm going to lose my mind. It's so hard to keep up and it's impossible to get these arrangements right. But if I think of them in terms of sections and boxes, then it makes it much easier to be able to navigate. Then what we did once we broke it down into boxes, we took a look at styling guides and figured out, hey, how do I kind of take any picture and kind of stylize what I want my text and my background and everything else to be around this sort of picture and set up a theme for my site. And so if we take a look at this one, the themes of the color scheme in here are generally in this color family. And so it was easy for me to like take colors out of here and then make the background match up with these colors here. And so you can see the red matches up with here, the background here matches up with this like bluish whatever tint color there. And so kind of giving a nice blend into the picture. You don't have to use this color scheme. You can use whatever you want to be honest. But just want to show how all these color schemes kind of come together based on the picture and how it makes it easier for the eyes to transition. And so we started off with Figma and understanding that. Then we got into a little bit more in terms of variants and variations. So how do we don't have to do individual components, but we can do what are called variants of each. And so if I want to come in here and I want to change the color of this, I don't have to like change it on the side. I can just have a entirely new variant and change the property to an orange variant, an orange on orange, or I can change the variant to something else to get a different color scheme. So all of these are things we cover in Figma, which make it really nice and easy to be able to make palettes of information. So I can see 12, 24 different palettes across the spectrum, and I can see which color schemes actually line up the way I want them to. Next, we looked at actually like stealing code. And so inside of HTML and CSS, we really honed in on being able to look at what's happening inside of the developer tools. So viewing developer tools and then literally stealing code. You can literally go in and copy the entire structure, copy element. We did this in the very beginning of our project that we worked on today, and we'll get all of these sections. We'll get everything in here. And then we can literally come to sources and steal the CSS. You can do this today on any website you want to. It's all available to you. So that's a big plus when doing coding. The developer tools give you so much information. All your answers are right in the developer tools. It's just learning how to read what's in the developer tools and knowing how to like sort of like not go blind when you're in here because there's a lot of information. After that, we looked at sort of CSS tags and IDs and getting familiar with what's happening down here to be able to manipulate what's happening in here. So if I look at hero and I look at the display flex, if I get rid of that in the hero section, if I get rid of the width, if I get rid of the background, if I get rid of the padding, then things start to change in the hero section. And it's like, whoa, things are moving around and I'm not sure what's going on. But I can start to add things back. I can start to play around with things, and then I can start to kind of like change things the way I want to. So if I wanted to change this to flex direction row, I can change that, and then the layout changes entirely. Only for me though. You cannot go to a web page and change it in the developer tools and have it change globally for the world. This is only available to you for your entertainment, not for anyone else. This will change your experience with the site, nobody else's. So just be aware of that. And then we looked at flexbox and padding and margins, and that's a very difficult concept to wrap your head around. You will need to play around with padding and margins, but the box concept is down below where you have the element, you have padding, which happens around the element, you have the border, which happens around the element on the outside edge, and then you have the margin, which affects other elements outside. And so padding gives space to the element inside, margin gives space to the element outside. So it's kind of like thinking about a house. Inside of a house is all of my padding. Outside of the house is all of my margin. So the distance between my neighbor's home and my home is my margin. The distance between my sofa and my wall is my padding. So just think of it that way in terms of a home. Afterwards, we went into a little bit more design and responsive design. So responsive design being, take a look at section 3 down here. Do you see section 3 down here? Because I certainly don't, but wait, there's magic and there's section 3 right there. And so how did that happen? That is done through what is called responsive design. So boom, now section 3 goes away. And we can see inside the CSS, wait a minute, why don't we see anything? Because here's a media query and we got rid of that section. So in here, now we have it, and then now we don't. So you can go to the week 4 video and check out how to do certain responsive designs. And then in week 5, we looked at pure JavaScript. We looked at arrays and functions, and then how to take sort of a simple math function like a tip calculator and turn that into a function. To understand scope, to understand variables, to understand consts, what we've seen quite a bit with um, what we're doing in React directly. And then finally, week 6, we got into React. We created our first app. We kind of covered Node, Node Package Manager, and NPX. We looked at the directory structure inside of React, inside of here. What's inside app.js? What is index.js? What's app.css? How do we manipulate these files? How do we understand these files? And then if we want to host this on like HostGator, how can we make a build folder and take all these contents and just put it into HostGator and be good to go? So quite a bit going on there. And then we looked at creating components and modularizing the components. So it was really focusing on how to break down these components into their own individual sections or individual files so that we could work on them individually later on. And then we brought in forms. So week 8 was all about contact forms. Week 8 was all about what we did here in this contact form, but much more in depth. We did the same thing at a high level, but we went through and actually printed out each one of these messages. We printed out each one of these components. We took a look at the difference between the form and the button being inside or outside. We took a look at more conditional formatting and how that actually works. And then week 9, we looked at React routing, and we actually honed in on this section right here and what comprises routing in this world, how to make it work. We looked at the global routing and then the local routing, and then how to separate elements out like we did in the layout. And we really honed in on this idea of props and props.children and what that really means and how that impacts our project. And then finally today was a review of all of what we did. So I know that was quite a bit. I appreciate you sticking around. I apologize for it being so long, but thank you very much for sticking with it. And I hope you got a lot out of this. And I hope you now have a portfolio where you can show off to your friends, your family, your future employers, and that you have a bit more confidence within yourself to be able to do coding. Because I do think it is a very difficult thing to do. But once you wrap your head around it, it is like artwork and it is like flying off the races. It is awesome once you get a handle on it. It is a lot of fun. So hopefully you're as excited as I am about coding and doing that in your future. I do know AI is on the horizon, but don't let that get you down. Learn to code. Just do it for yourself. That's what I'm doing. So I hope you enjoyed this and hopefully see you next time. Bye, everybody.